All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions, 540-0580. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. What else do we know? Well, Barry wants to talk about Sharia law. So, Barry, go ahead.
Yes.
You were saying.
Yes, well, I had written my legislator wondering if Pennsylvania was going to be coming up with some sort of legislation to keep Sharia law out of our courts. And my legislator replied that he didn't feel, in his opinion, it was necessary at this time because of the Constitution of the Commonwealth, the current laws of the Commonwealth, and the Constitution of the United States. But he said at the end of his sentence, he said, for citizens. So my question for you is, more specifically, what if there is a Muslim that commits a crime that is not a citizen, or for that fact, it could be any illegal immigrant, or someone who's in the process of becoming a citizen but not yet a citizen?
Right.
And Sharia law is used as a basis for exonerating them.
Well, Sharia law really doesn't apply in the United States because it mixes religion with law. The few times that it's been applied has been, for instance, when a court's trying to uphold or give comity or effect to a foreign court's custody order, for instance, which would apply Sharia law. So I don't see it as a real problem.
Okay.
And I just want to give you a quick list, by the way, of who else is in the Supreme Court. The South Wall includes Menes, Hammurabi, Moses, Solomon, Lycurgus, Solon, Draco, Confucius, and Augustus. So Confucius is there too, by the way. Justinian is on the North Wall as Muhammad, Charlemagne, John of England, Louis the Ninth of France, Hugo Grotius, William Blackstone, John Marshall, and Napoleon. And these are all the lawgivers that are depicted in the Supreme Court. An interesting little side note is the Supreme Court of New York apparently at one point had Muhammad as well, but they removed him in 1955 at request of various because it's illegal. Well, it's illegal. It's not appropriate to have images of the Prophet under Sharia law, right?
Right.
So anyhow, our U.S. Supreme Court, so at least the New York court at one point removed it as requested. The U.S. Supreme Court has always taken the position that they have these lawgivers up and they're not taking them down. But I think it's a good way to kind of remind us that we don't draw our law from any one source. We draw our law from all of human history. And that's the beauty of the American system is we haven't wed ourselves to any one particular way. It has to be done. And then at the same time, we've created a set of negative prescriptions called the Constitution, which is one of our unique contributions.
Why do you call it a negative prescription?
Because we say you can't do these things. The Constitution doesn't really give you positive things. In fact, communist constitutions quite often say you have the right to be fed, you have the right to clothing, you have a right to a house, you have the right to this, you have the right to this. Here in America, you have a right against things, right?
Okay, right.
And that's the beauty of the American Constitution. It doesn't grant you things, it prohibits government. Right. And it's much more powerful that way.
Okay, so can the American people feel secure in what you're saying here today?
I think so. I think that, listen, you always have to be vigilant. And what you have to watch out for, listen, the real guy to watch out for isn't Muhammad, and it isn't Mexican immigrants, and it isn't right-wing religious nuts, okay? The real guy to watch out for is this creeping thing called the federal government, who is ever increasing his power, her power, lockstep by lockstep, and just kind of nibbling here and there. So, well, we're going to have the Patriot Act because we're afraid of terrorism, so we want to protect ourselves. So we're going to give up some Fourth Amendment rights. Yeah. And, the right to counsel is important, but we're not going to always have a right to counsel. Now, here's one that they really sliced off of us, the right to a jury trial. You don't have the right to a jury trial if the incarceration is less than 6 months, okay? But you can be tried on 5 different charges, each carrying 6 months in prison, and the judge can run them consecutive to one another and give you 30 months in prison, and you still don't have a right to a jury trial. So somehow, when the Constitution said you have a right to a jury trial on any controversy over $20 in any criminal matter, the Supreme Court basically has interpreted that to mean, well, only if you're going to go to jail for more than 6 months, because we don't want to trouble the government with having to have jury trials on these lesser crimes, even though they can remove your right to own a firearm and do all kinds of other collateral things to you, take your driver's license away, etc.
So what can the American people do with these little creeping laws that the federal government is usurping?
Well, but here's my next problem with it. It's not just...
what can we do as citizens to stop this? Because
we've got to vote the rats out.
What's that?
Got to vote the rats out. I need to be vigilant, and you have to support. And this is tricky for some people. You've got to sometimes support people who reach different conclusions that you do. If what their ultimate goal is to restrict the power of government, you should always end up on their side.
Okay.
And that's sometimes problematic, and I could use abortion as an example. Some people are vehemently opposed to abortion. Other people are in between, and some people seem to be, vehemently in favor of it.
Understood.
But wherever you come down, the more intrusion you allow the government into anything, even the abortion question, you grant it more power. Now, we have to give the government power at some level, and we have to have the power to raise money and fight wars and regulate commerce and do all these things, allegedly, or else we'd be a completely totalitarian society, or we'd be a completely anarchist society, whichever way you want to look at it. But anyhow, my point is this. You have to strike a balance, but generally speaking, I think the government's already pretty powerful. So as a rule, whenever they want to move in a direction where they want to interfere with something, a decision you should make, or how you're going to make a decision. Now, here's the weird thing. Remember this, the health care law right now, right? Everybody's saying Congress doesn't have the power to do this and the federal government doesn't have the power to do this, but everybody agrees in the debate, the judges and the lawyers and the congressmen and the senators, that the states do have that power. So also don't forget about the power of your state government as well, which has the ability to simply tell you can or can't do something. So here in Pennsylvania, we've now said that it is illegal for you to drive a car if you have a metabolite of marijuana in your blood, no matter where it came from. And so if I sprinkle marijuana in my brownies and serve them to you, and you don't even get high from it, but it puts enough metabolite in your blood, which is 1 nanogram of the metabolite, which could show up very easily, it's now a DUI for you to drive the car, even though you were never intoxicated and you never voluntarily ingested the substance. And that's how much power the state has. So don't forget it.
Okay, but then there's the issue of, you had mentioned a few minutes ago, then we vote the suckers out. Unfortunately, so many of the laws that these Congresses and legislatures are passing now, we vote them out after the fact.
Well, we vote them out after the fact, and at the same time, let's just face it. I mean, there's been a movement here in Pennsylvania to try to do prison reform, right? Because we're killing our budget on incarcerating too many people for too long. But no politician wants to be the guy who voted for prison reform, so they can never get anything effectively done. And the public's behind it because the public gets all whipped out of shape because they don't want to think about things. People just want to react. They don't want to actually think things through.
Right.
And if you think things through, they get a lot more complicated and the decision-making process. But here's the answer. There's only so much of the pie to go around. And whether you're going to put 100% of that pie into incarcerating people, 100% of that pie into feeding the poor, or 100% of that pie into building roads, any which way you do it, there's just so much pie.
Right.
And that's where we've got to make the tough decisions. I mean, it's government doesn't have enough money to do everything for everybody all the time, as the Greeks just learned, and as many of the other European countries are learning. But for some reason, we're sitting over here going, oh, well, that's a model that we seem to want to emulate because there's got to be a program. There's got to be a way to help people. We're going to create jobs. We're going to spend money. Nothing wrong with government spending and nothing wrong with government borrowing per se. The problem with it, though, is when the attitude is that it's an endless thing that can be divvied up into a million, that there's more as you keep divvying it up. Wherever it goes, it doesn't – wherever you put it is where you put it. And so cutting costs everywhere is important.
Right.
Honey, I'm rambling now, so I got to go to break.
Well, thank you very much, Carl. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right, guys, welcome back. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions, 540-0580. And, of course, if you want to get a hold of us, go to romingerlaw.com or call the office at 241-6070, and that's in the 717 area code, 241-6070 at romingerlaw.com. I mentioned the phone number because I know a lot of listeners have kind of filled me in that we don't have, or that they don't have Internet access, and so there you go. Paul, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Carl. I spoke with you a couple months back regarding a POA banning me from seeing my girlfriend. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, she passed 2 weeks ago, and my question is, she passed on the 31st. Would they be still eligible for her retirement check that comes on the 1st? Would they still be able to get it?
Well, the short answer is the POA has lapsed at this point, so now the estate has to take over. And basically, with retirement, it pays up and until the date of death, generally. And generally, any excess funds have to be returned. But it all depends on the exact language of the retirement. Social Security, for instance, will zap back any funds or come looking for them. Some retirements may have a different policy.
Okay, so I guess this is something I take to the office, because if I can stick them just one more time, I'd be happy.
Yeah. And you can. I'm sure you should make sure that the employer and the pension plan know about it.
Okay. All right, well, I appreciate your time, Carl.
All right, my friend, good luck. Yeah, Paul got a raw deal there. I remember him from a few months back. 540-0580. Eric, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl.
What's
Good
going
to talk
on?
to you. Oh, not much. Just relaxing today for once. Hey, I've got a question about gun carrying permits. I know somebody with the person is actually me. Criminal record from, 1996 was the last offense. Second, 2 counts of shoplifting, a marijuana charge, and paraphernalia. I think evading a police officer. What are my chances of getting a gun permit currently?
So it's on the criminal record as what, a felony or misdemeanor?
A misdemeanor.
And any of them misdemeanor 2s or greater?
Second count of shoplifting might be M2.
Yeah, M2 shouldn't affect your ability to own a gun, but it could affect what a sheriff might do in looking at you.
Okay. So it depends. It's up to the sheriff.
Yeah. I want to take a look at your exact criminal record just to be sure. In other words, what I would do is request from the state police, if I were you, a certified copy of your criminal record.
I do have it because I've been going through an expungement process, or not expungement. I'm trying to get a pardon.
Okay.
And it's been going on for, I don't know, the last sitting governor, I was hoping would get it since he signed the most pardons in Pennsylvania history.
Well, they're a couple of years behind on the pardon applications.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Like, it's been 3 years, maybe going on 4 now for me. So, yeah, I'm just waiting and waiting.
Yeah, so I would look at that just to make sure, and then I would just be completely upfront with the sheriff about it, and then I may even want to supplement my application and say, by the way, I did apply for a pardon. I've been waiting for one, but this isn't who I am. If the sheriff denies, you have the right to have a hearing with a judge, and then the judge can overrule the sheriff. Judges have something sheriffs don't, which is absolute immunity.
Okay.
So sometimes sheriffs will make a decision, let's say, because they have some immunity, but it's called qualified immunity. But they may go, well, just to be safe. So I had this issue with a PFA down in Franklin County where the sheriff didn't want to return the guns, even though the law says that they're supposed to return them without further order of court. Because they still want an order of court directing them to comply with the law, because they don't want somebody to ever come back and say, well, you released these guns to this guy, and if you hadn't done this, then, my daughter would still be alive or whatever. So the theory is, if a judge orders it and you comply with a judicial order, well, then you're just complying with judicial order and go sue the judge. Oh, yeah, by the way, the judge is immune.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't aware that you could plead your case to get a gun permit.
Yeah, if the sheriff denies you, you have the right to have him reviewed by the judge.
Well, that's sort of like an appeal kind of thing?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, my friend.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right. So I'm gonna talk some more here, take a few more calls in a second. 540-0580. So I had the chance to go down to Philadelphia to help test drive a muscle car. I weaseled my way in on a test drive, and the lady I was with, who I weaseled in with, took the car, and I guess she hit the accelerator very hard. And you know, these muscle cars have a lot of sound noise. They're kind of like noisy, and I think she made a big noise with the car. But there was more than one car involved in the test drive, and it was out in the suburbs. So a police car comes rolling up, and the officer says, "I assume you're going to tell me," I think something along the lines of, "that you didn't make that loud noise I just heard." And she dutifully looked at him and said, "What noise?" And he kind of threw his hands up in the air and muttered something, and then moved on. And it was kind of funny because this is a classic legal problem. That's why I mention it. There's two cars, both of which could have made the noise. He didn't see which car made the noise. And the driver was clever enough to look at him and go, "What noise are you talking about?" Not saying there wasn't a noise, but just saying, which one were you, what noise is that? And I think he just kind of threw his hands in the air and said, "Oh boy, how am I going to prove this case?" I don't know. Maybe if it had been me driving, he would have cuffed me because sometimes there's a theory that women can get away with more on the roadside when the officer pulls them over. But I don't really subscribe to that theory. I would like to believe it's not true, but then again, people claim it is. And I do know a few women have come in my office over the years and said, "Well, I cried and everything, and I still got the ticket." And I'm like, "You cried and everything? Like, was that a plan?" What do you mean by that? Anyhow, I just thought it was very interesting that the classic legal conundrum, and remember this, folks, if you say, "Why, yes, that was me," well, then that may be a confession. And if you say, "I didn't make a noise," that would be perhaps a lie and therefore consciousness of guilt. But if you say, "What noise are you talking about?" You don't know if he heard a piano crashing or a girls' field hockey game. You don't know what he heard, what the loud noise, maybe the crowd cheering. I mean, obviously, he probably meant the car. But then you can be buoyed by the fact that there's a similar automobile sitting nearby, and therefore he has no ability to discern which car it actually was. So my point on that, again, on police interaction, once again, being overly responsive is not helpful. Anyhow, made for kind of a funny story. And, of course, it's always fun that when you're test driving some car that you have the police interaction because the dealership really appreciates that as well. 540-0580. Bill, you're on the air.
Who?
Bill.
Oh, hi, Carl.
Hey, what's going on?
Not much. I've talked to you a couple of years ago. Your brother came and picked my truck up.
I remember that.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a question, and I heard about this on Glenn Beck.
Okay.
How come this Trayvon Martin case, I mean, it's got national attention. I heard something about the exact same opposite happened out in Texas or something. It was a black guy that shot a 22-year-old white kid that had an IQ of a 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the outrage in that?
Well, I mean,
Reverend Sharpton and Jackson.
Where's the outrage when Rush Limbaugh made fun of me in the national media and I didn't get a call from the president? That's what I want to know.
Oh, I didn't even know he did that.
Well, no, but here's my point, and my point is just this, and this is the weird thing about the world today, okay? There are so many little towns and cities and places around the country where all kinds of stuff happens. But what captures the national imagination, we never know what that's going to be next. But let me give you an example. Just I want you to think this through with me for a second right now, okay?
Okay.
There are, let's say, 2,000 towns in Pennsylvania, right?
Okay.
That means that if once every 10 days there was some kind of unjustified shooting, right, in one of those towns, it would take how many years? It would be 20,000 days of shootings, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then you space them all out the way they really are. What they do, what the national news media does, is just pick a random case out of some place that has some appeal, or somehow the right reporter gets it and runs with it. And the joke is, whatever the first stories of the day are, they just keep getting repeated again and again in each series of media that comes out. So my theory on this is that, and if you look at the Trayvon Martin case history, the plaintiff's attorney for the family who's planning to sue somebody has done a really good job of drumming up the publicity in the case. And, as a lawyer who's been connected with some high-profile cases, I don't fundamentally oppose what that lawyer did. he was able to garner attention for the case and shape the way it's being perceived, maybe to the benefit of his client or his client's family. But the summation of what I'm trying to say here, I guess, is you're going to find if you actually go out, like kidnappings, okay? You know, we all heard about Elizabeth Smart, and we've heard about this kidnapping and that kidnapping. But there are oodles of them that never make the news. And there are shootings every day. In fact, there are people dying in Afghanistan, American soldiers, right? And we don't hear about them because the media chooses not to report what's going on in that area. Or back when Tiger Woods was running around, right? There was some, Rush Limbaugh talked about this actually, that there was some theory that, come on now, like the National Enquirer didn't have some tips or didn't know what Tiger was up to, but there seemed to be kind of a de facto, you know, he's not fair game yet thing going on there.
Right.
But magically, as soon as his wife beat him up with a golf club, it took all of about 15 minutes for the media to come forward with all that stuff.
All over the papers.
Right, because they knew. They already knew. At least that was Rush's theory. And his theory was that the industries that he represented and the amount of money that flowed through the advertising dollars just made everybody a little nervous or squeamish because you didn't want to be the guy to upset the big advertisers by ruining their spokesperson, which could hurt their sales. Therefore, they might not want to publish in your magazine or in your newspaper. And so there is a big cabal out there amongst the media and the big advertisers because, remember, this is all dollar-driven. I mean, even here, you know, we're not here for free. And what I mean by that is, you know, WHP, Clear Channel's got to make a profit or else they can't provide the service. Doesn't mean that that's bad or wrong. It just means that profit considerations creep into all media at all levels.
Right.
So anyhow, coming back to this is, yeah, where is the outrage in that other case? Well, it just didn't have the right spokesperson or it didn't quite get the right spin early on. And Trayvon Martin's case did, and it's interesting because you can see some spin in it, you know. Zimmerman would be Hispanic male. Now he's a white male. That's part of the spin of the case. The picture that they use of Trayvon, I don't know if it's what he looks like or didn't look like, and I don't think it's exactly relevant in what he did look like, but it's interesting that somebody would pick a youthful picture.
Yeah,
and
12 years old, and I've seen a picture of him when he was 17.
And
Nothing
you know,
even close, yeah.
And here's my question. I don't really care, and I don't think he was going to look excessively scary, but here's the deal. On self-defense cases, if I've got a 500-pound guy with a size 57 shoulder looking at me, I might sound more justified in being scared of him than I would a 120-pound 12-year-old.
Right.
So, again, this is all about the perceptions, and why is the outrage not in other areas? Again, it's just because whatever case captures the media, and a lot of times you have to have these crosswinds, you know? So here you've got the overtones of a race-based case combined with self-defense and gun law and the right to defend yourself versus the anti-gun folks, et cetera, et cetera. So it plays on multiple angles, so it gets even more play.
Well, it's the exact same thing, the one I heard, I thought it happened in Texas.
Yeah, no, and it did. It just never caught on. And just remember that. I mean, how many houses burn down every day that you don't read about in the newspaper?
Right.
All right, Bill.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Carl.
Thanks. Got to go to break. 540-0580. Well, according to my Facebook page, our iHeartRadio signal here of Weekend Appointments just switched over to the Hershey Bears. And what was I just telling you guys, right? It's about the money. It's about the profit. So apparently the Hershey Bears are more important than me on iHeartRadio. Oh, well. And I know some of you really do love the Hershey Bears, so what can I tell you? Anyhow, enough about those Bears. What else am I thinking about? Inside joke, I guess. Doug, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. I'm calling about my teenage daughter. She got a traffic ticket, and we checked the thing for the hearing to try to get the points removed. When I'm reading the ticket, it says that the scope was broken and it was taken by myself, is what's written down. Does that make it any less reliable?
Scope was broken. Which scope?
I don't know. It just says scope broken and then time myself.
Yeah, it does sound interesting. Sounds like there's something to work with there.
In other words, does that make the ticket less reliable?
Well, I mean, it makes the whole proof less reliable. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like now maybe they have a certified odometer in the car and blah 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 blah. But here's the answer: a lot of times, if there's some issues like that, that's a prime one to work out as well for a non-moving violation, so that there's no points for your daughter and no insurance consequence.
Right. Okay.
All right.
But it does make that probably a lot less reliable.
Right. But again, that's going to have to be articulated to the judge.
Right.
All
Okay.
right.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, brother. So let's see here. I mean, yeah, lots of people are noticing this. I mean, we must have a lot of people listed on iHeartRadio, Shane. I mean, we're probably breaking their little iHearts by not being on there. Just saying. Mike.
Yes.
You're on the air.
Hello, Carl.
How are you?
I had to make a comment. I've been hearing this on the news for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
The term white Hispanic has been used since the 1980s on all federal applications, all state applications, and when you go to apply to re-up your carry permit, it's on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I mean, everybody acts like this is something just new that somebody made up, and I'm sorry, it's not. And the reason why is because Hispanic is not a race.
Right.
It's a nationality, or implies a nationality. And it's kind of misleading. If you look on there, let's say white non-Hispanic, white Hispanic on any of those applications.
Right.
Then I don't think it's a very accurate way of doing things, and I'm not exactly sure why they do it. I have an idea.
Yeah, I'm not exactly, for voting purposes, right? But
exactly, when you go to register to vote, it's been on there for years.
I have a, I have a theory, which was, I think it was San Francisco or California or somebody tried to do one of these race-based breakdowns, and pretty soon they came up with like 42 categories of racial backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds, and then they had to chop it up some more because some people say, well, I'm an Inuit, but I'm not really an Inuit because my mom was also Thai, so I don't consider myself, And pretty soon it becomes exactly the same problem that Hitler had, which is if you start tracing people's roots sufficiently, you suddenly determine that everybody's related to everybody at some level.
Yeah. Well, I think what disturbs me here a little bit is I work around a lot of Hispanics. There are people there that are whiter than you will ever be.
Right.
Okay, and there are some there that look like African Americans, and I had a younger man explain it to me there. Hispanics in general, or at least Mexicans in particular, there's more mixing between the different races as opposed to here. So you'll see a broader spectrum. Plus, they have a bigger percentage of a Native American population there as well.
Well, yeah.
So you see a lot of that influence there as well. Now, they've never broke it down on any of the classifications in regards to that. But it goes back to your statement about, well, if you try to break this down even further, I have a friend that when he makes the applications out, he actually puts down other. There isn't a classification there for other on any of these. What disturbs me is that I keep hearing this redundant theme the past couple of weeks on most of the talk show programs as if this is just something that's popped up in order to provoke a racial hatred. I think it was a mistake. I think when they first started out on this thing, they really didn't know exactly who they were dealing with.
Well, the name, think of the name. George Zimmerman, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't sound like a Hispanic name. Again, now, this is... These are the things that make me laugh because,
well, there's a lot more European influence in Mexico and Latin America than most people realize.
Oh.
The French, the Germans.
If you study,
a lot of people we deal with from there are German descent.
But
if you're just looking at a name, my first guess would be, well, he's probably German or Dutch or something like that. But I think this was all a mistake. But it really bugs me that it sounds like everybody's trying to make an issue out of this white Hispanic thing. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in.
Well, yeah, and I'll tell you what. If I was going to recommend, if you want to learn a little bit about the ethnic history of Mexico, the best way to do it is with a cookbook. And probably who I would commend is Rick Bayless, who's kind of my favorite Mexican chef, and you can see him sometimes on the Food Channel and other places like that. But I have a few of his cookbooks, and he goes through the history dish by dish. And interestingly, in Mexico, when the Spanish took it over, one of the first things they did was send a lot of the natives back to where but France to be trained to cook. So a lot of like traditional Mexican, what we consider traditional Mexican cooking, and the dishes that we see these days have a ton of German influence, Spanish influence, and traditional French cooking influence in them.
And one of the similarities they have with us is, back in the 70s, I did a lot of hitchhiking in western Canada and western United States and northern Mexico. And I had a friend that traveled extensively in Mexico on business. Like we are, when you go from one part of Mexico to the next, they're very... It's kind of like you got a lot of Dutchies around here.
Right.
And if you get down to the south, it's something else. You go to the Midwest, there are more Norwegian people there, and you get into the Southwest.
Chipped beef.
And Mexico is the same way. It just depends on what part you're in.
Yeah, and it's so very, right. There's very, very regional cuisines with different levels of influence. And so in some areas what they eat is much closer to the original native diet, and in other areas it's more like high French cooking.
Yeah, they actually integrated better with their indigenous populations there than the Europeans that came here, I think. At least that's the impression I get. And I was actually surprised the studies that some of the younger people had made and had passed along to me, because some of it I was aware of. But, just to kind of come full circle on this, the term white Hispanic and the term white non-Hispanic has been used on applications now for decades. And I'm not saying I agree with it, but it's been there.
Yeah, no, and I think it's an interesting point. And I think the only thing that I'm trying to say, and I think this maybe some other commentators have, is that we're suspicious that had it been a non-Hispanic white and a Hispanic, it would be pitched as Hispanic male, white male. Not.
Hey, well, the likelihood does exist there for somebody to kind of jiggle the wires a little bit on the some little soapbox they're trying to promote or something. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I have heard this on Bob's show. I've heard it on a few of the other programs, and they're making a soapbox out of it. Yeah. And I just don't think it's there.
So here's
I think they're as bad as the other side is in that respect, to be honest with you.
Well, wait, I always get a chuckle out of Rush when he says, taking on the mainstream media. And
he is the mainstream.
Well, that's my thing. I'm like, Rush, you have 40 million listeners.
Really? It's such a paradigm.
But it's
I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but I had a minute here, and I thought, well, this might be an opportunity to at least get 2 cents on it.
Yeah, no, really. Think about it this way: everybody always wants to be the underdog, right? So they always got to craft themselves as that. So MSNBC News tells you that they're the underdog. Fox News tells you they're unfairly maligned. Everybody's unfairly maligned. Just ask them.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good point. That's a good point. So.
All right, my friend.
We have a good day, sir. And
thank you. Very, very interesting point there. 540-0580. Jim, I'll take you quick before the break here. Jim.
Hello.
Yeah, Jim.
From the outset, I'll tell you, my granddaddy came from Sicily, which was overrun by Carthaginians and Northern Africans. So I'm part black. I don't know. 100th, 1/10th, I don't know. Anyway, I called about...
Maybe a little Moorish, too.
Okay?
Yeah, go ahead. What's going on?
False advertising. There's a chain store in central Pennsylvania that advertises sandwiches made daily. You know where they're made? They're made in Massachusetts, and they bring them down in a truck.
Huh.
That, to me, is false. That implies they're made here. They bring them in a truck. They put a label on them saying they're outdated in 3 days. So when I win the Mega Millions, I'm going to bring suit against them. Could you please illustrate how much it'll cost me? $500,000 to bring this chain to court?
I don't think it would cost you $500,000, but it certainly could be very expensive if they want to fight. Do you remember when Taco Bell was challenged on their taco meat not too long ago? They quickly beat that law firm down. And I'm not sure they have the right facts or not, but there is a lot of shenanigans that go on with food. And I brought this up the other day, and people were making fun of me about it. But, again, Congress, for instance, says that chicken freezes at 28 degrees, not 32. And, of course, some cracker said to me, well, Carl, I mean, come on, chicken has salts in it, and it's not going to be frozen solid at 32. It's going to freeze some lower. I'm like, okay, yeah, so it freezes solid, say, at 29 or something, but they picked 28 to intentionally allow you to freeze it, but then still call it fresh so that it would last longer. This thing with food, you can treat food with certain chemicals, but as long as you're not mixing them in, you're just claiming you're treating it. You don't have to put it on the ingredient list, even though we all know it gets in there. So is it surprising to me that somebody's allowed to say they make their sandwiches fresh daily? Or that they're made daily? Of course, made daily is kind of a funny term, isn't it?
Made daily.
Yeah, we make them daily. We make them every day. Now, we're selling you ones from 4 days ago, but we're making them daily. I got to go to break, right? I got to go to break.
Answering the question. Adios.
All right, thanks, man. Wow, that's some fun, snappy music there. 540-058. Oh, thank you, Shane. That was a wise something. Oh, boy. Yeah, okay. All right, 540-0580, answering your legal questions. Joe, you're on the air. Hey, Joe.
Good morning, or good afternoon, Carl.
Good afternoon. What's going on, my friend?
Well, first off, we're going to some snappy new music. We're going to Drum and Bugle Corps show in York. You ought to try it.
Well, you know what? I actually have a very good friend. I'm not going to say his name on the air, but you probably know him. He was involved with 5-Star Brass Productions.
I know him very well. The reason I'm calling you, I got a dish for TV reception. Did we lose you?
I got you.
I got a dish for TV reception.
Uh-huh.
And it is not working properly. It keeps telling me loss of signal, loss of this, loss of that. I call them, I don't get any results. I email them, I don't get any results. Do I have any options?
Well, you have an absolute right to get out of the contract at this point, it would seem. Your other option, I don't know if they have a competitor you can apply for, or you need to go to Comcast, or what the theory would be.
Okay. They are not regulated by any state agency then?
The short answer is I don't think they fall under the tariff system that the cable companies do. They certainly could be regulated under the consumer protection laws. And you might have some kind of course, you have to read the fine print on the contract you sign, but you may have some kind of claim against them. But they may have one of these forced arbitration clauses, which our good Supreme Court recently said is A-OK.
Okay. Thank you for your show, and thank you for what you do for the people.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I am familiar with Drum and Bugle Corps, and I highly recommend it to people.
Absolutely. Once a year, that's my favorite day.
Well, you know what? And you got to see, let me, I've heard people go, well, what is that? I'm like, you should see the Marines do it if you want to see it.
Absolutely. I've seen it many times.
So, anyhow, my friend, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
You too. 540-0580. If you're listening on your iHeartRadio, you can't hear me right now, as I've learned. I got somebody just told me I had to stop mowing their lawn and go sit in their car so they can listen to me, which really means that their life is, I know, Shane, it's pretty sad, isn't it, there's actually a person out there like that. It's almost as lame as listening to my podcast, which is pretty lame. I sometimes do just to see how many ums and oohs and ahs I can, fill up the hour with, because those are like those little verbal crutches that if I was a professional broadcaster, I'd be trained to remove. And, of course, I would develop the voice of God somehow, and I'm not sure exactly how they do that, but that's what they do. Okay, so guys, in the meantime, if you have legal questions and you don't have a chance to get them answered here on the air, of course, you can always come see us at the office. You go to romingerlaw.com. You'll be able to contact me there. You can also go to weekendappointment.com and claim your free will. You send the free will kit in. We'll put the wills together. You come in. We'll do it. Shane, the NRA event that we talked about, that's tomorrow. Gotcha. And I think if you look it up online, you can find it as well. I don't know if they have any room left or not. They probably sold the tickets out again. I don't know. Yeah, well, I know we got a full table, but we might have room. So if somebody wants to weasel in, they should let us know here, and you can give me the information. We might have room for 2 more. I'm waiting for confirmation on that, but it would be fun to get some listeners if they wanted to come. Of course, please don't bring your sidearms, Steve Snyder. That's my theory. Anyhow, it's a very nice event. It raises money for the NRA, obviously, to help fight the evil gun laws that everybody's always trying to pass. Although, as you can see now, what happens is when you do get your stand your ground laws, they create this backlash, and I'll be curious to see if that's stop state legislatures from going forward or what's going to happen with that. I also want to renew my healthcare law prediction. I'm still maintaining that the United States Supreme Court may uphold the healthcare law, and I still think John Roberts may be the surprise vote, and everybody thinks it's going to be Kennedy. But I'm thinking that this could be the surprise vote where Roberts says that in order to be intellectually consistent with some decisions I made in the past, this is what I'm going to do. So let's keep our eye on that. And we're going to get the answer here because, remember, the springtime's coming up, and they're going to announce it before they go out of session in July, which means it's going to happen in the election year here. That's going to be huge news. Other than that, as you guys know, I'm very busy with certain other cases, but we're still taking new clients, and I'm fortunate enough that doesn't consume all my time. But we do have a team of 6 attorneys that can help you. So we practice all areas of the law. We go to Lancaster, got an office down there. Also, and I want to make sure everybody realizes this, we do a lot of personal injury work. And so if you do know somebody that was injured in a car accident, make sure you have them check out Rominger Law and contact us. We'll be happy to help. And you think you'll find our percentages are very competitive. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That was a nice one, huh? All right, guys. I'll see you next week. In the meantime, go to RomingerLaw.com or call 241-6070 or just Facebook me, Carl Rominger, Carl with a K.